I'm not sure, because of the hurricane, I can't get a good grip on how America is feeling about this Nord Stream bombing, but that's what it was. We know that this was sabotage. There's no natural explanation for it, and it would have somebody diving about 220, 230 feet below the surface. That is not something that your average diver can do. And this is encased in concrete. So this is blowing up the concrete and getting to the pipeline to blow that up. This is, I mean, it's not going to the moon, but it is, rather difficult to do. So who did it? This is an escalation that this is so important for you to understand. This is now a non-military key infrastructure that has been destroyed. If Russia thinks we did it, they've already said nukes are now on the table. That gives us a green light to use nukes. Forget about nukes for a second, because if that happens, we all have 18 minutes. I'm going to the bar. I'm going out with a drink in my hand. But you got 18 family, meet me at the bar. My wife would probably already be there. I've been there for months living with you. Anyway, so forget about nukes for just a second. And let's talk about what other things can Russia do. This is non-military key infrastructure outside of the borders of Ukraine. To date, as far as we know, combat targets were either in Ukraine or were military targets hit inside of Russia by Ukrainian Air Force or Special Forces. But the target menu now includes key civilian infrastructure, electricity, water utilities, energy production. That makes Russia more dangerous than ever. And that would be true no matter who carried out the attack. But it's significantly more true if this attack came with or without U.S. support from the West. Second, this represents a major shift in the balance of power. The leverage that Russia had or has had over the EU, because now, assuming the pipelines can't effectively or quickly be repaired, this removes one of the major legs of Putin's leverage over Europe, and particularly over Germany. Politicians and in Europe, including Ukraine, were quick to blame Putin for destroying Nord Stream. And of course, the completely unsubstantiated claims were immediately picked up everywhere in the West, particularly the U.S. media, including the Associated Press, the New York Times, Washington Post. You immediately have the West saying it's Russia. Okay, it might be Russia. It might be Russia. I would never have hesitated to say this before on the air, ever. But I know the game that we are playing now. So I want to be very careful, because I don't want to be called a Russian operative or spreading Russian misinformation. Russia says it's us, and they make some compelling points. I hope to God it's not us. I root for us. But the truth will set us free. So let's just say it's Russia. Let's just say it's Russia. Does it make sense for Putin to have done this? First of all, these aren't Russian pipelines. These are privately owned pipelines. Russian companies and some European companies. Gazprom, which is the Russian oil and gas industry owned by Russia, they're the minor shareholder. So the major shareholders come from Europe and come from Russia. if you are a major shareholder in Russia of the Nord Stream pipelines, I'm guessing you're pretty pissed today. And that's after many months of being pissed at Vladimir Putin because you're shutting down my business. I want to sell gas to Germany. So is it in Putin's best interest to sabotage these pipelines because he's pissing big oligarchs off? Okay. Nord Stream 1 has carried hundreds of billions of cubic meters of natural gas from Russia to Germany since it came online. Nord Stream 2 never became fully operational. 2 days before Russia invaded Ukraine, Germany vetoed opening of that pipeline to try to put pressure on Putin into not invading. It didn't work. And then we sent a TIE fighter in, and he didn't know there was this shaft right in the middle. Anyway, both pipelines are kept pressurized with gas. That's a key part of the structural integrity in dealing with the pressures of being deep in the ocean. So no, the gas leak isn't proof that Germany was secretly buying Russian gas all along. It's perfectly normal for the pipeline to be kept pressurized, even when not pumping gas into Germany. Now, we found out about this because of the Swedish seismologists. I just want to be one of those guys. I'm a Swedish seismologist. Yeah, sure. Quaking. They detected an underwater explosion. It is estimated to be as powerful as several hundred pounds of TNT. When they recognized that explosion, at the same time, the pressure in Nord Stream 2 dropped to zero. Now, according to their preliminary findings, the explosion carries the signatures of a man-made blast, not an underwater volcano, landslide, or anything else natural. Hours after this explosion, a combat air patrol out of Denmark spotted a half-mile-wide bubbling cauldron of gas escaping. Now, as if to confirm, about 16 hours after the first blast and 100 miles away from the first one, another explosion, even larger, occurred at another point in the pipeline. This time, it was Nord Stream 1. That's a major part of why analysts were so quick to say this is sabotage. It's kind of like when the first plane hit the tower, and we're all like, how could the pilot have possibly... And when the second plane hit, you didn't need any information. You knew this was coordinated. That's what happened yesterday. Okay, so who benefits? Unfortunately, it's us. It's us. Now, there seems to be a rush to judgment that this was a false flag attack by the Russians because Putin is a madman, and he is. But there's a couple of problems with a false flag because Putin's major leverage over Europe has been energy production, with about 20% of Europe's total energy production coming via the Nord Stream pipeline. So destroying the pipeline cuts off all of his leverage. Okay, so why would he do that? Next, if it was a false flag operation by Russia, you're missing the flag part. You know what I mean? By the way, CIA is the best at this, but you're supposed to leave something behind, so you're like, absolutely, that was right. Look at the Russian flag floating up to the top. There it is. They spelled Russia out in bombs. Okay? You leave something. Yeah, you know what's bubbling up? Vodka's bubbling up. Got it. Now, if this had happened a week before Putin had called for further mobilization of the Russian army, and if it was a clear attack by NATO or the U.S., then it might make sense as a false flag op. Stir up nationalism in Russia, justify the calling up of 300,000 reservists, etc., then it might make sense. Okay. Are we capable of doing it? Of course we're capable of it. Are we spiritually that dark inside? Is somebody in this administration that dark that they would do it? And, you know, it's not just one person. This would take a lot of people. Would our special forces actually be that dark that they would do this? I don't think so. Maybe I'm naive, but I pray. Look, we don't want to believe our country would do such things. And this appears to have been a deliberate act of war against a civilian target of no immediate or direct threat to the U.S. or our allies. So that goes against everything we are.